Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. Each week while working on the new album, the Dead Milkmen ask each other a question. I don't know, if you blow it up, it looks exactly like Tony Danza. You can't tell me it's not. Oh, hi, Gherkins. Hi. Eleanor of Aquitaine once famously observed that if you have money, you're eccentric. If you don't, you're batshit crazy. And that leads us to this week's big question, which is who is or was the most eccentric individual in the history of rock and roll? Now, this is there's a lot of debate, but it's Buckethead, is what I'm telling you. And just like the lady with the log is the log lady, the guy with the bucket on his head is Buckethead. Are you guys, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Buckethead or not. I know a little bit about Buckethead. Yeah. If most people are familiar with him because he was in Guns N' Roses for like 4 years, from like 2000 to 2004. And he was one of the, I think, two main guitarists on Chinese Democracy, an album which took almost as long to come out as our new album. So he worked on that. To be fair, and it's going to be fair here, Buckethead is a brilliant guitarist. I mean, he is really, really good. The Germans would have no qualms with Buckethead. For those of you who are new to this show, go back to the first episode and just watch through it.
Everyone since then.
Everyone since then that comes up. He's really good. Slash, who's no slouch on the guitar, said that he had a lot of difficulty when he went back into Guns N' Roses recreating Buckethead's parts. Buckethead is just that good. If there was a Buckethead show in town, I would probably go just to see him. I've seen clips, and he does look fascinating. So other than the KFC bucket on his head or the Mike Myers mask, people are probably wondering, well, that's not enough to make him the most eccentric individual in the history of rock and roll. And I'm about to tell you a story. And the only reason, the sole reason, the total reason that this video exists is I wanted to find a way to tell this story. So this video is basically a delivery mechanism for this story. Back during the recording of Chinese Democracy, and what I'm about to tell you is according to multiple sources. But during the recording of that, Buckethead got tired of coming into the studio every day and playing the same part over and over again. Now, somewhere in Buckethead's weird backstory that he created for himself, he escaped from a chicken farm. It's very David Lynchian. I've seen it several times and I still can't figure it out. Anyway, Buckethead asked for them to, within the studio, to build him a chicken coop. So they did. They built a chicken coop for Buckethead with chicken wire, straw on the floor, which apparently got kind of unclean and everything, whole 9 yards.
Oh, and chickens? The actual chickens in there too?
I don't believe he had chickens in there too, because it's about to get weirder. And you're going to be glad he didn't have chickens in there too. Because Dan, there was a VCR in there and a TV. And Buckethead would like to sit and watch porn. Again, this is according to several sources, right? So at one point, Axl Rose walks in, sees him watching the porn and says, I don't want that pornography putting a negative vibe on this album. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute, people. That's Axl Rose saying that. Yeah. Okay, now you think that's weird. This is when it gets super weird. Okay, so supposedly Buckethead's tenure with the band ends when Guns N' Roses were sitting around watching a news report about a riot, which for a change was not a riot at a Guns N' Roses show, which might have been new to them. They're like, there are riots other places. No, this was in the Pakistani city of Karachi. And during the riot, and they saw this on TV, the rioters burned a KFC. So Buckethead supposedly leapt to his feet and shouted, they've gone too far now. I'm joining the army. They're not going to hit KFC. No way. That's it. I can't record anymore. I'm joining the army. Now we really are at war. So my point here being that if there are at least two stories where you're in that story and Axl Rose is in that story and Axl Rose is the one behaving normally, all right, then you are indeed the most eccentric individual in the history of rock and roll. Gentlemen, I rest my case. I drink my beer.
It's interesting. I'm choosing Prince Rogers Nelson.
I've never heard of this guy.
The artist formerly known as.
Oh, okay, the squiggly thing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of his eccentricities. Maybe he changed his name to a symbol. And then he changed his name to a symbol in 93 and then back to Prince is a regular name in 99. But other things that make him eccentric are that he had two doves, one named Divinity and one named Majesty, and he had them sing on his album One Night Alone. They are credited, anyway, they're credited on the album with ambient singing. He had a private salon in his house, but it was only for him, not his wife. He was epileptic as a child, and an angel appeared to him and told him that he was cured, and he was. I don't know if that makes him eccentric, but that's before he was famous. He liked the color purple.
I didn't know that.
But he didn't let anybody else in his band wear the color purple. I don't know if that makes him eccentric. He believed when he was recording the album that later became known as the Black Album in 1987 or 86, I forget. He believed that he was possessed by a demon named Spooky Electric. And right before the album was to be released, supposedly after tripping on ecstasy, he thought the album was too evil and refused to let it be released. Although I think it did get released in the 2000s sometime. I don't know, there's just some things. He became a Jehovah's Witness in 2001 and proselytized, like all Jehovah's Witnesses do, knocking on strangers' doors. And I don't know how true this is, but I read that his hips were so damaged from jumping around on stage in high heel shoes that he needed hip replacement surgery, but because of being a Jehovah's Witness, he didn't believe that he should have blood transfusions, so he didn't go for the surgery and instead treated himself with painkillers.
Which is okay with Jehovah's Witnesses?
I don't know. I guess that's okay.
Jehovah runs an OxyContin business out of the back of his car. That's why so many witnesses.
Some sources say he actually did resort to surgery, but still needed painkillers. Actually, that's what led to his death. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't rise to the eccentricities of Buckethead, but that's
he does have something in common with Billy Corrigan.
What's that?
Chemtrails. Both were believers in chemtrails.
Oh, and he didn't believe in time. Mm-hmm. Yet he was never late for any of his shows.
Wait Morris Day and the Time.
Well, he didn't believe.
It's Morris Day and the Time.
And the Time.
Which is a band that he created.
Well, he claimed time is an illusion.
It was a what?
Time is an illusion.
It is a man-made construct, yeah.
Okay, a man-made construct. Well, that's what maybe he was right. He played a unique purple guitar designed just for him.
You're shocking me at every turn, Joe.
Forget it.
Well, I think he recorded mostly everything on his albums too. Like all the instruments.
Oh, he was a multi-instrumentalist. That's eccentric.
Well, no, every instrument except the kazoo. He just couldn't master it. He swallowed 4 of them. That's probably led to his death. Before they said, Prince, bring in someone else to play the kazoo.
Oh, he swallowed a kazoo?
Yeah. He could play every instrument except the kazoo. He swallowed the kazoo. Swallowed 3 of them. They got 2 of them out. But for the rest of his life, whenever he farted, there was a weird noise.
He rented a mansion in West Hollywood and modified it so extensively, including equipping fountains with purple water. that he had to pay about $1 million to the owner.
What?
To have the unrenovated.
The owner was a basketball player. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Next, please.
Yeah, I think those are both good choices. I chose, I don't know, maybe I stepped outside of rock and roll, but I have a broad idea of what I consider rock and roll. It's people that are kind of like innovative and doing different things that maybe are considered weird at the time and even currently, such as Sun Ra, who just has a crazy, very eclectic discography, starting in like the 50s, where he was doing kind of like a doo-wop kind of thing, but kind of strange too, like drench and reverb. And I first heard this stuff, Joe, you let me borrow like a 2-disc anthology kind of thing, like 20 years ago or something. And it runs the gamut through his career of like different style stuff. He got into using like just random instruments and talking about taking a trip to Saturn when he was young, and that he came back to talk about all these ideas of peace. They tried to draft him into World War II, and he told them that he was a conscientious denier, is it? Or objector. And they wouldn't accept that. And he said as soon as he gets a gun, he would kill his commanding officer. And they put him in jail. And yeah, he got really into the music after that. And he started wearing very elaborate like clothing, saying that he was from Saturn, dressing kind of like a futuristic, like pharaoh. And also like espousing this wisdom about like racial justice, but using these kind of analogies about outer space. And we'll put some links to some great video stuff. Space is the place. This one where these people walk in thinking they're going to get a job like in outer space. You got to see it. It's crazy. But you know, he and he lived in Philly for a while too. There's a lot of people, some people that's performed with him years ago are still there in Germantown. And what's cool is like it's a drug-free kind of environment there. Like he didn't want people doing drugs. And I don't know. I think he's the most eccentric because he really kind of like stuck to his story his whole life. He was still talking about Saturn at the end of his life, and he's just kind of ahead of his time. I think that's what eccentric people end up getting looked at, you know, later. Back at that.
I have a copy of Space is the Place, and I put it on whenever I have guests who won't leave. It is a tough,
like those electronic jellyfish.
Yeah, a bit of a slog there, folks. Yeah, the delivery is rather wooden. So yeah,
it says interesting stuff about like he's like, well, what if Black people had a planet to themselves? Like their vibrations would be totally different, and they would have different respect for culture. They wouldn't have to worry about money and immigration. They could focus on people and culture. I also listened to this interview with him from like the 60s. I'll put a link to that too. If you don't, if nobody's familiar, anybody's not familiar, you should check him out. It's cool.
Yeah, I got to see him once in New York outside on a pier along the Hudson River. And it was a phenomenal show.
Was he playing or floating?
He was floating. No,
he
was playing, and it was like a 20 or 30 piece band. It was pretty amazing, actually.
Oh, the orchestra, yeah.
It was an amazing show. Anyway, so I would like to talk about an eccentric, and I was careful. I mean, we don't want to talk about folks who may have suffered from mental illness. We want to talk about people who are eccentric and creative. Unconventional, maybe is the best word. I want to talk about Don Van Vliet, known as Captain Beefheart. He was a singer, a songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and also a visual artist.
Okay.
He apparently, I've got a bunch of facts I've gleaned from the internet. He was apparently had a 4.5 octave vocal range. He was known, and I quote from Wikipedia, his enigmatic persona. He frequently constructed myths about his life and was known to exercise an almost dictatorial control over his supporting musicians, including locking them in the rehearsal houses and feeding them only bread and soybeans for like a month.
Do what you got to do.
He was like a high school friend of Frank Zappa, and Frank actually helped him get an early record deal and produce one of his early albums called Trout Mask Replica. But he had a very rocky kind of relationship with Zappa because he was he was jealous of Zappa's success. So they kind of had an on and off again friendship. There was a couple of albums. The three albums I'll cite are Trout Mask Replica, Lick My Decals Off Baby, which I think is a great album title, and Dock at the Radar Station. Those are kind of like the sweet spot for me. His earlier stuff was very sort of R&B influenced, and it got more sort of out there as time went on. We'll link this a couple of songs, like the three that I'm going to cite are Moonlight on Vermont, and the title track, Lick My Decals Off Baby, and a song called Ashtray Heart are three of my favorites. He actually retired from the music scene in 1982 to focus on his artwork, and I think he moved to New York. And a couple of quotes that I had liked from him. One, I've always loved his description of New York as like a bowl of underpants. And someone asked him, what do the sounds of your paintings make? And he said, shadows breathing on themselves. Unfortunately, or sadly, he died in 2010. He had suffered from multiple sclerosis for many, many years, and he died from complications of multiple sclerosis. Anyway, interesting character. There's plenty on the internet out there and for you to check out. So that's my nomination for an eccentric. There's many eccentrics in the world of rock and roll out there.
Frank Zappa actually came up with the name for him, Captain Beefheart. And Frank Zappa also came up with the name Triscuits, which is for years, Nabisco owned Trout Mask Replica because of Triscuit. It was a legal battle that went on.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to end up on this list. All right, let's go to recommendations. So first of all, thank you to everyone who made kind comments about last week's filler video where I showed keyboards. I thought I was going to get ripped apart by wolves, but no, you people are very polite. I appreciate that. So now I'm going to punish you by talking about more equipment. This week, I am recommending the Novation Circuit. I was at the punk rock flea market here in Philadelphia, and somebody was selling this, and I lucked out. I got this. Ooh, and there on the hand of the synthesizer was a hook. I got this for about a third of what a used one cost. This one turns out had never been used. I found that out when I got it home, noticed that the save function had not been enabled, which happens when you fire it up and do some stuff, and it had all the demos in it. What happened, I'm playing a thing called Yak Fest next month on the 6th, August 6th. And I decided I got this like a week or so ago. And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how to play it, fill it full of songs. I'll be performing at Yak Fest, and I will be doing at least 3 or 4 original tunes, maybe a cover, and then maybe a sort of a Berlin School boiler room jam, which I rarely, if ever, do that sort of thing. So I'm walking on a high wire, folks. I'm out there without a net, but I took this thing like a fish to water. And I've talked to the guys. One of my favorite party scenes in the movie is in the movie Liquid Sky, where this woman gets up and does a song called Me and My Rhythm Box. Information Society covered at one point. So this is going to be sort of my shot at the Me and My Rhythm Box thing. So I'm both excited and wonderfully scared about that. And I will be performing, folks, as Heinrich, which is a whole nother thing. So with that, I want to recommend now a movie Oh, the movie is Last Night in Soho. Came out in 2021. I finally got around to seeing it. A lot of people watching this have probably seen it. I kept meaning to see it, and my God, is it good. It is. It's probably going to end up in my list. If I make a list of 50 favorite films, probably going to end up in that. It is a wonderful horror movie that takes a while to become a horror movie. Some people I know start to watch it, and they're like, oh, this is a fantasy, and eventually becomes a horror movie. It's a film about the dangers of nostalgia, about, boy, I wish I'd lived back then, why you don't want that to sort of come true. I always say that if Stranger Things were accurate to the 80s, every episode would be an hour long of the kids just vomiting blood onto the sidewalk while Nancy Reagan dances naked in front of a large pile of cocaine. I hope we don't have a graphic for that. Please don't. Please don't. No, Joe. No graphic for that. All right. So those are my recommendations. Thank you. And now it's just me and my rhythm box. This was signed by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but he signed it in black ink. Thank you.
I recommend a YouTube video titled Liberal Hypocrisy is Fueling American Inequality. Here's How. And it's on the New York Times YouTube channel. It's almost a year old. You might have already seen it because it already got about 7.5 million views. But basically, the guy looks at Democrats in states where they control all levers of power, like California, New York, or Illinois, and shows how they really aren't living up to the values they espouse. Check it out. It's not very long.
Yes, I remember when Joe Biden tried to kill his vice president. Morons.
I would like to recommend a Sun Ra album I just heard for the first time. I guess that was today. Sun Ra Orchestra meets Salah Ragab in Egypt. And it sounds like you'd think it would. Sun Ra in Egypt. It's pretty cool. Put a link to it. And also the movie The Lobster, which is not that new of a movie, I don't think. I'm not sure when it came out, but I watched it the other night and it's pretty disturbing, but it's funny. It reminded me of like Stanley Kubrick and Wes Anderson kind of made a movie together. It'd kind of be like that. There's elements that you're like, what the hell is going on here? It's not necessarily futuristic, but it's definitely like dystopian. So it's kind of mysterious and weird and quirky. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about.
I would like to recommend, I found an article about an artist and friend of the dead Milkmen named Chris Shary. He's best known for his depiction of Milo from The Descendants. He's done work for The Damned, Devo, The Meatmen, Circle Jerks, 7 Seconds, The Dead Milkmen, Agent Orange, The Melvins, Chemical People. He's done a lot of artwork. There's a great article about him. You can see some of the examples of his work. And I'll also provide a link. We worked with him over the last couple of years in connection with a company called Bifocal Media that does limited edition t-shirts. Some of you out there may have already purchased some of these shirts with Chris's artwork on them. And I'll provide a link to their page that shows you all the currently available Milkmen shirts from those folks. Anyway, that's my recommendation for the week. Check out Chris Shary, the artist.
Well, we reached the end of another exciting episode. Oh, look at the little kitten. Hello, little kitten.
This is the best cat in the world. She is the best.
What's her name?
That's Susie.
Susie.
If you would have shown that cat at the beginning of the video and a few times more, that's guaranteed 3,000 views.
Well, I was thinking if I don't ever have like a question, we'll just have the cat on for 30 minutes. We'll talk about the cat. But I think I woke her up from a nap. I'm going to put her back on.
Yeah, I got 2 of them running around here somewhere.
She's the best. Like she plays a lot because she's still a kitten, but she's also really cuddly and like she's friendly to people and she lets you pick her up and she purrs a lot. But she's a little crazy. We watched her eat a fly today. She climbed up the drapes. I was like, no kittens, we're getting it. And even the kids were like, we want an older cat because nobody likes the older cats and they have to have a home. And but then when we we were like, no, this is definitely the cat. Especially after we kidnapped that one, we had to get,
that cat's going to be delicious. I'm a cat person. I got nothing against dogs, but
I like other people's dogs. Like
dogs love me. Dogs will follow me all over, but no, I'm with Hemingway and H.P. Lovecraft. I'm a cat person.
Oh. Yeah, I think Hemingway's cats are like hooked up. Don't they have like their own home? And
they have 6 toes. Yeah, they live down in Key.
Yeah, there's like a whole race of cats, and like didn't he like give all of his
It's
money
not the boys from Brazil. He wasn't breeding a master race of cats, for Christ's sake. They just happened to have 6 toes. A friend of ours had a cat with 6 toes. And she was moving. This story takes place in West Virginia. Joe might be cutting this out. And she had a cat with 6 toes, and this woman and her son are there helping with the move and all that. And the woman goes, "Look at that cat! It's got 6 toes." And our friend was about to say, "Yeah, what a little freak cat I have." And she goes, but before our friend said, the woman goes, "Just like you, Bubba."